Dae-ho Kim pressed his face against the cold window of the transport ship and watched the massive space station grow larger. Galactic Academy Station Omega-7 looked like a giant metal flower floating in the darkness. Its silver arms stretched out in all directions, each one bigger than the biggest building he had ever seen on Earth. His hands were sweating. In just a few minutes, he would step off this ship and become the first human student in the Academy's 200-year history. The thought made his stomach feel strange. "Attention, passengers," came a voice through the ship's speakers. The words were translated into his language by the small device in his ear. "We are now docking at Station Omega-7. Please gather your belongings and prepare for departure." Dae-ho picked up his single bag. Everything he owned for the next 4 years fit inside it. His parents had saved money for 20 years to send him here. His mother had cried when he left Earth. His father had told him to make them proud. The docking tube connected with a soft thump. Other passengers began moving toward the exit. Dae-ho saw beings he had only read about in books. A tall creature, with blue skin and 4 arms, walked past him. Something that looked like living crystal floated by, making soft music as it moved. A being made of what appeared to be colored gas drifted toward the door. None of them looked at him. Dae-ho wondered if they even knew what he was. The station's air tasted different when he stepped off the ship. It was clean but had a metallic flavor that reminded him he was very far from home. The docking bay was huge. Ships of all sizes and shapes were connected to the station like sleeping animals. "New student!" called a voice. Dae-ho turned to see a creature that looked like a large insect walking toward him on 6 legs. It had compound eyes that sparkled like jewels and spoke through a translation device attached to its throat. "You must be the human. I am Administrator Kix. Welcome to Galactic Academy Station Omega-7. "Thank you," Dae-ho said. His voice sounded small in the huge space. "I am Dae-ho Kim." "Yes, we have been expecting you. You are quite famous here, you know. First of your kind, to join us." The administrator's antennae moved as it spoke. "Come, I will show you to your dormitory and give you your class schedule." They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were covered with strange writing in dozens of different languages. Other students passed them in small groups, talking in sounds that his translator could not understand. Some stopped talking when they saw Dae-ho. Others stared openly. "Do not mind them," Administrator Kix said. "They are curious about you. We all are." Very little is known about humans in this part of the galaxy. Some records say your people are warriors. Others say you are peaceful. Some say you are very intelligent. Others say you are driven by emotions. It is all very confusing. Dae-ho did not know what to say to that. His room was small but comfortable. It had a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out at the stars. The walls could change color when he touched a control panel. Administrator Kix showed him how to use the food dispenser and the cleaning station. "Classes begin tomorrow," the administrator said. "You will start with basic galactic history, xenobiology, mathematics, and psychological defense studies. Your classmates have been told about you. They are eager to meet you." After the administrator left, Dae-ho sat on his bed and looked out the window. Space was so empty and dark. He could not even see Earth from here. He was more alone than he had ever been in his life. His communication device beeped. A message from home. He pressed the button and saw Hana Park's face appear on the small screen. She was his best friend from university on Earth. Her smile made him feel a little better. "Dae-ho," she said. The signal took several seconds to reach him across space. "How is it? Have you met anyone yet? Are they friendly?" He told her about the station and Administrator Kix. He did not tell her how scared he was. "It will get better," Hana said. "You are the bravest person I know. Remember why you are there. You are not just representing yourself. You are representing all humans. Show them who we really are." After the call ended, Dae-ho tried to sleep. but every sound in the station seemed loud and strange. He could hear other students talking in the corridor outside his room. Their voices sounded like birds singing or wind blowing through metal pipes. The next morning, Dae-ho found his first classroom. 23 other students were already sitting at curved desks that formed a circle. They all stopped talking when he walked in. The silence felt heavy. A tall reptilian student with green scales stood up. "You must be the human. I am Taemin. I represent this class in student government." His voice was deep and slow. "We have heard much about your species." "Nice to meet you," Dae-ho said. He sat in the empty chair that had been left for him. It was designed for his body type, which meant someone had been thinking about his comfort. That made him feel a little better. "Is it true that humans eat other animals?" asked a student that looked like she was made of purple crystal. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. "The records say this, but it seems very strange." "Some humans do," Dae-ho said, "but many humans only eat plants." The crystal student, who introduced herself as So-Ra, made a note on her tablet. "Interesting. And is it true that humans live on a planet with dangerous weather and many predators?" "Earth can be dangerous," Dae-ho admitted, "but it is also very beautiful." A student who looked like colored mist in a clear container began to change colors rapidly. "Jinwoo is asking if humans really fight wars with each other," Taemin translated. His people find this concept disturbing. Dae-ho felt his face grow hot. "Yes, sometimes humans fight, but we also help each other. We make art and music. We take care of our children and our old people. We are not just warriors." The questions continued through the morning. Some students seemed interested. Others seemed worried. A few seemed afraid of him, though Dae-ho could not understand why. He was smaller than most of them and had no natural weapons like claws or sharp teeth. Lunch, Dae-ho sat alone. The food dispenser gave him something that tasted like chicken, but was bright blue. Other students sat in groups, talking quietly and sometimes looking in his direction. He missed home. He missed his parents and Hana and food that looked normal. He missed understanding everything that people said around him. He missed being just another person instead of being the strange alien that everyone stared at. But he also remembered what his father had told him before he left Earth. "You are not just going to school, son. You are building a bridge between humans and the rest of the galaxy. It will not be easy, but it is important." Dae-ho finished his blue food and prepared for his afternoon classes. Tomorrow would be better. It had to be. 3 weeks had passed since Dae-ho arrived at the academy. He was starting to understand the daily routine. Wake up when the station's lights slowly brightened to copy morning. Eat breakfast from the food dispenser. Attend classes with students, who still watched him like he might do something dangerous at any moment. Study in his room while talking to Hana on his communication device. His classmates were polite but distant. They answered his questions about their homework, but did not invite him to study with them. They nodded when he sat near them, but did not start conversations. Dae-ho felt like he was living behind invisible glass. The only class where things felt different was psychological defense studies. Professor Veltar was an ancient insectoid who had taught at the academy for over 60 years. Her compound eyes seemed to see everything, and her voice carried wisdom that made even the oldest students listen carefully. "Today we will discuss your final examination," Professor Veltar announced during Thursday's class. Her 6 legs moved slowly as she walked around the circular room. "As you know, this course is designed to prepare future leaders for the mental challenges they will face." The students sat up straighter. "Final examinations at the academy were famous throughout the galaxy for being difficult. Your final test will be the fear protocol," the professor continued. "Each of you will enter the academy's fear chamber and face your species' primal fear construct. This is not just a test of courage, it is a test of understanding." So-Ra, the crystal student, raised one of her sharp appendages. "Professor, can you explain what a fear construct is for those who might not know?" She glanced at Deho when she said this. Professor Veltar nodded. A fear construct is a psychic manifestation created by our ancient technology. The machine scans the deepest parts of your mind and creates a physical form of what your species fears most. It is not just what you personally fear, but what your entire people fear in their very souls. Taemin, the reptilian student, spoke up. "My older brother took this test 5 years ago. He said the saurian fear construct was terrible to see." "Tell us about it," said a student with tentacles instead of arms. Taemin's scales changed color, slightly. "It was the ice wraith, a creature of frozen death that represents the end of all warmth. Long ago, our desert homeworld almost froze when our sun began to die. Even though we found a new world, the fear of ice and cold lives deep in every saurian's mind." My brother said facing it was the hardest thing he ever did. Professor Veltar nodded approvingly. "Very good, Taemin. The ice wraith is indeed the manifestation of saurian species fear. What about you, Sora? Do you know what construct the Vextari face?" The crystal student's surface became cloudy for a moment. "The chaos storm. A swirling mass of disorder that breaks crystal harmony. My people value order and logic above all things. The idea of complete chaos terrifies us at our core." Other students began sharing what they knew. The tentacled mollusk. People face the great drying, a construct that absorbed all moisture. The energy beings face the void absorber, something that ate light and heat. Each species had faced their deepest terror for generations. Jin Wu, the gaseous student, changed colors rapidly. His translator device spoke for him. Jin Wu asks what the human fear construct will be. There are no records in the Academy database. The classroom became very quiet. All eyes turned to Deho. He felt his heart beating faster. "That is a very good question," Professor Veltar said. Her antennae twitched as she looked at Deho. "In 200 years of Academy history, we have never had a human student. The fear chamber has no data about human species fears." "But it will create something, right?" asked Taemin. "The machine has to make some kind of construct." "Yes," the professor said slowly. "The machine will scan Deho's mind and reach deep into human collective memory. It will find whatever humans fear most and give it physical form. But what that might be, none of us can say." Deho swallowed hard. "When is the examination?" 2 weeks from today. All students will face their constructs on the same day. You will go last, since we do not know what to expect." After class, Deho walked slowly back to his dormitory. Other students whispered as he passed. He caught fragments of their conversations through his translator. "What if the human construct is dangerous to us too? I heard humans fight wars all the time. Maybe their fear is about peace. My cousin says humans are unpredictable. Their construct could be anything." That evening, Deho called Hana. Her familiar face on the screen made him feel less alone. "You look worried," she said. "What happened today?" Deho told her about the fear protocol and the examination. Hana listened without interrupting. "So you have to face whatever scares humans most," she said when he finished. "What do you think that is?" Deho had been thinking about this question all afternoon. "I do not know. Maybe death? Or war? Everyone here thinks humans are violent, so maybe our fear construct will be about peace or being helpless." Hana shook her head. "I do not think so. What scares you most, Deho? Not what you think should scare you, but what really does." Deho thought carefully. "Being alone. Being misunderstood. Letting down the people I care about." He paused. "Not being able to help someone who needs me." "Those are not violent fears," Hana said gently. "Maybe humans are different from what your classmates expect." But what if I fail the test? What if I cannot face whatever the machine creates? You will face it, Hana said with confidence. Because you are brave. Not the kind of brave that fights things, but the kind that keeps going even when you are scared. After the call ended, Daeho lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling. His room's walls were set to show a peaceful blue color, but it did not make him feel calm. In 2 weeks, he would enter a chamber where an ancient machine would look into his mind and create his species' greatest fear. Every other student knew what to expect. They had heard stories from older students who had faced the same constructs. They could prepare mentally for what was coming. But Daeho would face the unknown. He thought about all the fears that humans carried. Fear of death, fear of pain, fear of being alone, fear of not being good enough. Which one would the machine choose? Which fear lived deepest in the human soul? Outside his window, the stars looked cold and distant. Somewhere among them was Earth, where billions of humans lived and worked and loved and worried. Soon an alien machine would look into the darkness of human nature and show the galaxy what humans truly feared. Daeho just hoped he would be strong enough to face whatever emerged from that darkness. The news about the fear protocol spread through the academy like fire through dry grass. Within 2 days, every student on the station knew that the human would face an unknown construct. Some were excited to see what would happen. Others were worried. Daeho noticed the change immediately. Students who had been politely distant before now avoided him completely. When he entered a room, conversations stopped. When he sat down for meals, nearby tables emptied. Even his classmates, who had been slowly warming up to him, seemed nervous around him. "It is not personal," Taemin told him after xenobiology class. The reptilian student had stayed behind when others hurried away. But no one knows what to expect from a human fear construct. What if it is dangerous to the rest of us? Dangerous how? Daeho asked. Taemin's scales shifted to a darker green. Fear constructs are made from the deepest parts of a species' mind. They show what terrifies you most. For most species, these fears are about natural things. Cold, heat, chaos, emptiness, but humans are different. Different how? You make weapons. You fight wars with your own kind. Your records show violence and conquest across your entire planet. Taemin paused. What if your fear construct is something that wants to destroy everything around it? Daeho felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He had never thought about it that way. That evening in the common study area, he overheard a group of students talking about him. They thought he could not understand their untranslated languages, but his device picked up some words. Predator species, said one voice. Apex hunters, said another. What kind of nightmare do apex hunters fear? Asked a third. The speculation got worse over the next few days. Students created theories about what the human construct would be. Each theory was more frightening than the last. Sora approached, him during lunch with her tablet full of calculations. I have been researching human history and psychology, she said. Her crystalline surface was clouded with worry. Based on your species' behavior patterns, I believe your fear construct will be related to loss of control. What do you mean? Daeho asked. Humans appear to need control over their environment. You build cities, make laws, create governments. You even try to control the weather and the growth of plants. Sora showed him charts on her tablet. A species that needs so much control would fear chaos most of all, but not ordinary chaos. What kind of chaos? The kind that fights back, the kind that learns and adapts and spreads. Sora's voice became quieter. What if your construct is some kind of intelligent disorder that could escape the fear chamber and affect the entire station? That night, Daeho had trouble sleeping. He kept thinking about Sora's words and the worried looks on his classmates' faces. During breakfast the next morning, he heard more theories. A group of energy beings were discussing the possibility that humans feared the loss of their physical bodies. Their translator spoke in worried tones about a construct that might try to absorb the life force of everyone nearby. "What if it is something that feeds on fear itself?" one of them said. "Humans seem to create fear in others wherever they go. Maybe they fear something that is even better at it than they are." Another student suggested that humans might fear peace itself, since they seem to always be fighting someone. Their construct could be a creature of absolute harmony that forces everyone to stop thinking for themselves. The theories grew stranger and more frightening each day. Some students thought the human construct would be a massive predator that hunted thinking beings. Others believed it would be something that destroyed technology and civilization. A few worried it might be a disease that spread from mind to mind. Jin Woo, the gaseous student, changed colors frantically whenever Dae-ho was nearby. Through his translator, he shared his theory that humans feared other humans. So the construct would be some kind of evil version of Dae-ho that knew all his weaknesses. "Think about it," Jin Woo's translator said during one particularly uncomfortable lunch. "What could scare a predator more than a better predator? What could frighten a warrior more than a superior warrior? The human construct will probably be everything humans are, but worse." By the end of the week, some students had started avoiding the entire section of the station where Dae-ho lived. 3 different study groups asked to be moved to different rooms so they would not be near him during the examination day. The worst part was that Dae-ho began to wonder if they might be right. What if humans really were as violent and dangerous as everyone thought? What if his species' deepest fear was something terrible enough to hurt his classmates? He called Hana that evening, feeling more alone than ever. "They are all afraid of me," he told her. "They think my fear construct will be some kind of monster that will hurt everyone." Hana frowned on the screen. "That is ridiculous. You are the gentlest person I know." "But what if they are right? What if I do not know myself as well as I think? What if humans really are violent predators deep down?" "Dae-ho, listen to me." Hana's voice was firm. "Do you remember when we were children and you found that injured bird in the park?" Dae-ho nodded. "You cried when you saw it was hurt. You carried it so carefully to the animal hospital. You visited it every day until it could fly again." Hana smiled sadly. "That is who you are. That is who humans really are. Yes, we can be violent when we need to protect ourselves or others, but that is not what defines us." "Then what does define us?" Hana thought for a moment. "Love, hope, the need to connect with others, the fear of being alone." She paused. "Maybe that is what your construct will be. Not some terrible monster, but something that shows how much humans need each other." After the call ended, Dae-ho sat quietly in his room. Outside his window, the stars seemed less cold than before. Maybe Hana was right. Maybe the other students did not understand humans at all. But in 4 days, he would find out, for sure. 4 days, the ancient machine would look into his mind and create whatever humans feared most. And everyone on the station would finally see what lay in the deepest, darkest corners of the human soul. The Academy's administrators had called extra security for the examination day. They had also prepared emergency medical teams and evacuation procedures. No one knew what to expect from the first human fear construct in galactic history. Dae-ho just hoped that whatever emerged from the fear chamber would not prove that all the worried theories about humans were true. He hoped that when his classmates saw what humans really feared, they would finally understand what his species was truly like. But hope, he realized, was sometimes the most frightening thing of all. The morning of the fear protocol examination arrived gray and cold. The station's lights dimmed to create an artificial dawn that felt heavy with worry. Dae-ho woke up early and stared at the ceiling for a long time before getting out of bed. He had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he imagined terrible creatures emerging from the fear chamber, monsters with his face. beings made of human violence and anger. Things that would prove to everyone that humans were as dangerous as they feared. The examination hall was in the oldest part of the station. Dae-ho had never been there before. The corridors were darker and the walls were covered with strange symbols that his translator could not read. Ancient technology hummed behind metal panels, making sounds like sleeping giants. When he arrived at the waiting area, his classmates were already there. 23 students sat in chairs arranged, in a circle around the room. They looked nervous but determined. When Dae-ho entered, several of them looked away. Professor Veltar stood in the center of the room. Her compound eyes reflected the dim light as she looked at each student. "Today, you will face the deepest fears of your species," she said. "Remember that this is not about destroying what frightens you. It is about understanding it." "What if we cannot face our construct?" asked a student with tentacles. "Then you will learn something important about yourself," the professor replied. "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is what you do when fear is present." The fear chamber was a round room made of black metal. Strange patterns covered the walls, glowing softly with blue light. In the center stood an ancient machine that looked like a crystal tree with metal roots. Cables ran from it to devices that Dae-ho could not identify. "The machine is over 3,000 years old, Professor," Veltar explained to the watching students. "It was built by a species that no longer exists. They understood the mind in ways we are still learning." One by one, the examinations began. Tae-min went first. Through the observation window, the students watched as the reptilian student entered the chamber. The machine began to glow brighter. The air in the room shimmered like heat waves. Then the ice wraith appeared. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, a creature made of frozen wind and sharp ice crystals. It moved like winter itself, bringing cold death wherever it touched. The temperature in the observation room dropped just from watching it. Tae-min stood very still as the construct approached him. His scales had turned almost white with fear. The ice wraith circled around him, leaving trails of frost on the floor. Then it lunged forward with claws made of ice. But Tae-min did not run. Instead, he began to speak to it. The students could not hear his words through the thick walls, but they could see his mouth moving. He talked to the construct like it was a person, not a monster. Slowly, the ice wraith began to fade. As Tae-min spoke, it became less solid, less real. Finally, it dissolved completely, leaving only drops of water on the floor. Tae-min left the chamber sweating but triumphant. "I told it that winter always ends," he said to his classmates. "I reminded it that spring always comes." Sora went next. Her fear construct was the chaos storm she had described earlier. It filled the chamber with swirling colors and impossible shapes that hurt to look at. Random sounds and lights exploded everywhere without pattern or reason. Sora faced it by creating order. She began to sort the chaos, finding small patterns in the madness. As she imposed logic on small pieces of the storm, it began to calm. By the end of her examination, she had turned the chaos storm into a gentle rainbow that danced quietly around her feet. Jinwoo faced the void absorber, a creature of living darkness that ate light and heat. He defeated it by sharing his own energy, showing that even when faced with emptiness, he could choose to give rather than take. One by one, each student faced their species' ancient fear and found a way to overcome it. Some fought their constructs, others reasoned with them. A few simply accepted their fear and let it pass through them like wind through water. The observation room grew quieter as the day went on. Everyone knew that Dae-ho would go last. Everyone knew that no one could predict what would happen. When the 23rd student finished her examination, Professor Veltar turned to Dae-ho. "Are you ready?" Dae-ho's mouth was dry, but he nodded. "As ready as I can be." "Remember," the professor said quietly, "the construct will be a part of you. It comes from your species' deepest memory. Do not fight what you are. Try to understand. Deho walked to the chamber door. Behind him, his classmates pressed against the observation window. Some looked curious. Others looked worried. A few looked afraid. The chamber door closed behind him with a soft click. The ancient machine began to glow brighter than it had for any previous student. Cables sparked with energy. The patterns on the walls pulsed faster. Deho stood in the center of the room and tried to stay calm. He thought about Earth and his parents and Hana. He thought about all the theories his classmates had made about what humans feared most. The machine's glow became almost blinding. Energy crackled in the air around him. He could feel something, scanning his mind, reaching deeper than any thought he had ever had. It touched memories he did not know he carried. It found fears that belonged not just to him, but to every human who had ever lived. The air in the chamber began to shimmer. Something was coming. In the observation room, his classmates held their breath. Professor Veltar watched with her ancient eyes wide with curiosity. Security guards stood ready at the chamber door, though no one knew if they could stop whatever was about to appear. The shimmering grew stronger. Energy gathered in the center of the room, taking shape. The first human fear construct in galactic history was about to manifest. Deho closed his eyes and waited to meet whatever lived in the darkest corners of the human soul. The energy in the fear chamber reached its peak. Light blazed from the ancient machine so brightly that the observation window automatically darkened to protect the watching students. The patterns on the walls pulsed like a heartbeat. Faster and faster until they became a steady glow. Deho stood in the center of it all, his eyes still closed, waiting for the monster that everyone expected to appear. He had prepared himself for something terrible, a creature of human violence, a beast made of war and anger, something that would prove all the worst theories about his species. The light began to fade, the energy settled, and in the silence that followed, something small materialized in front of Deho. He opened his eyes and looked down. There, sitting on the floor of the fear chamber, was a child, not a monster, not a beast, not a creature of violence or chaos, just a child. The construct looked to be about 6 years old, with dark hair and sad eyes that seemed too old for such a young face. It wore simple clothes that were slightly too big, as if it had been dressed by someone who did not quite know its size. It sat with its knees pulled up to its chest, looking very small and very alone. In the observation room, complete silence fell. Professor Veltar's compound eyes went wide. Sora's crystalline surface became perfectly clear with shock. Taemin's scales shifted through colors that had no names. Jinwoo stopped changing colors entirely, becoming a pale, steady blue of confusion. "Where is the monster?" whispered one student. "Where is the violence?" asked another. Deho stared at the child construct, not understanding. This was what humans feared most? This small, sad child? The construct looked up at him with eyes full of loneliness. It did not speak, but somehow Deho could feel what it was feeling, lost, abandoned, forgotten, afraid that no one would ever come to find it. "Hello," Deho said softly. The child construct tilted its head but did not answer. Instead, it held out its arms in the universal gesture that all children make when they want to be picked up and comforted. The students in the observation room expected Deho to step back. They expected him to fight the construct or try to reason with it like the others had done. They expected him to treat it as an enemy to be defeated. Instead, Deho knelt down. "You are scared," he said to the child. "You are alone." The construct nodded and a single tear rolled down its cheek. Deho felt something break open in his chest. This was not a monster to be fought. This was not a threat to be overcome. This was humanity's deepest fear made real, and it was not about violence or conquest or chaos. It was about being alone. It was about being abandoned. It was about being forgotten by everyone. Who should care? Without thinking about the watching students or the examination or what anyone would think, Dae-ho opened his arms. "Come here," he said gently. The child construct looked at him for a long moment. Then it scrambled to its feet and ran to him, throwing its small arms around his neck and holding on tight. Dae-ho lifted the construct and held it close. He felt it trembling against his chest, felt its fear and loneliness as if they were his own. Because they were his own. They were every human's deepest terror, the thing that lived at the bottom of every human heart. The fear of being truly, completely alone. "It is okay," he whispered to the construct. "You are not alone now. I am here. Someone is here." The child construct pulled back to look at his face. Its eyes were still sad, but something else was growing there too. Hope, trust, the beginning of comfort. In the observation room, the students watched in amazement as something unprecedented happened. The fear construct was not fading like the others had. It was not being defeated or overcome or reasoned away. Instead, it was being comforted. As Dae-ho held the child and spoke softly to it, the construct began to change. The sadness in its eyes grew lighter. The loneliness that surrounded it like a cold wind began to warm. It was still clearly a fear construct, still obviously not real, but it was transforming into something that had never existed in the Academy's history. A fear that was being healed instead of conquered. "You do not have to be afraid," Dae-ho told the construct. "Someone will always care about you. Someone will always come looking for you if you get lost." The child smiled for the first time since it had appeared. It was a small smile, but it lit up its entire face. Professor Veltar pressed closer to the observation window. In 60 years of teaching, she had never seen anything like this. Every other species fought their fear constructs. They overcame them through strength or logic, or acceptance. But humans, it seemed, did something entirely different. They embraced their fears and tried to heal them. "Remarkable," the professor whispered. The other students were equally amazed. They had expected violence and chaos from the human construct. They had prepared for danger and destruction. Instead, they were watching the most gentle thing any of them had ever seen. Dae-ho continued to hold the child construct, rocking it slowly back and forth. "Everyone gets scared sometimes," he said. "Everyone feels alone sometimes. But that does not mean you are alone. That does not mean no one cares." The construct nestled closer to him, no longer trembling. The fear was still there. But it was wrapped now in comfort and understanding. It had not been destroyed or overcome. It had been acknowledged and cared for. "This is what humans fear most," Dae-ho said, though he was speaking more to himself than to the construct. "Not death, or pain, or chaos. We fear that no one will love us. We fear that we do not matter to anyone. We fear being forgotten." The child construct looked up at him and smiled again. This time, the smile was bright and warm, and then, slowly, gently, it began to fade. Not like the other constructs had faded, in defeat or dissolution. This construct faded like a child falling asleep in safe arms, peaceful and content. It had been seen, acknowledged, and comforted. Its deepest need had been met. As the last traces of the construct disappeared, Dae-ho stood alone in the center of the chamber. But he did not feel alone. He felt connected to every human who had ever lived, to every person who had ever been afraid of abandonment, to every child who had ever needed comfort in the dark. The chamber door opened, and he walked out to face his amazed classmates. The examination chamber fell completely silent as Dae-ho stepped out. His classmates stared at him with expressions of wonder and confusion. No one seemed to know what to say about what they had just witnessed. Professor Veltar was the first to speak. Her ancient voice carried a note of amazement that her students had never heard before. "In 60 years of teaching," she said slowly, "I have never seen anything like that. Every species I have observed faces their fear construct as an enemy to be defeated. But you, Deho, you treated yours as something to be helped." Sora's crystalline surface was completely clear, showing her inner confusion. "I do not understand. The construct was your species' greatest fear. Why did you comfort it instead of fighting it?" Deho looked around at his classmates. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he did not feel like an outsider looking in. He felt like he had something important to share. "Because that is what humans do," he said simply. "When we see something that is hurt or scared or alone, we try to help it, even if it frightens us." Taemin's scales shifted to a warm green color, but it was a fear construct. It was not real. "It felt real," Deho replied. "And real or not, it was a child who needed comfort. How could I fight something like that?" Jinwoo changed colors rapidly, his translator working to keep up. Jinwoo says this explains many things about human behavior that confused him. He says your species does not try to destroy what threatens you. You try to understand it and heal it. Professor Veltar nodded thoughtfully. "This is a profound insight. We have been studying human records for months, trying to understand why your species is so successful at diplomacy despite also being capable of warfare. Now I think I understand." "What do you mean?" asked a student with tentacles. "Humans do not see enemies and allies as permanent categories," the professor explained. "They see beings who might be helped or healed. Even when they fight, they often try to make their enemies into friends afterward." The conversation continued as they walked back to the main part of the academy. Other students and teachers they passed stopped to stare at Deho. Word of what had happened in the fear chamber was already spreading through the station. "I still do not understand why the human construct was a child," Sora said as they entered the common area. "Other species fear natural disasters or cosmic forces. Why do humans fear abandonment?" Deho thought about this question for a long moment. "Because humans need each other to survive," he said finally. "We are not the strongest or fastest or smartest species individually, but together we can do amazing things. A human alone is vulnerable. Humans together are powerful. So your greatest fear is being cut off from other humans," Taemin said, understanding dawning in his voice. "Being cut off from anyone who might care about us," Deho corrected. "It does not have to be other humans. We fear being alone in the universe with no one to love us or remember us." Over the following days, everything changed for Deho at the academy. Students who had avoided him before now sought him out. They wanted to understand this human approach to fear and conflict. They asked him questions about Earth and human society that showed genuine curiosity rather than suspicion. During one lunch conversation, a group of energy beings asked him about human wars. "If humans try to heal their enemies," one of them said, "why do they fight so many wars?" "Because sometimes healing requires stopping someone from hurting others first," Deho explained. "We fight to protect people we care about. But even then, we try to help our enemies understand why they were wrong, not just defeat them. This is why humans make such good mediators," Sora observed. "You see conflict as a problem to be solved, not a contest to be won." The news of the human fear construct spread beyond the academy. Within a week, Deho received messages from universities, governments, and organizations across the galaxy. They wanted to know more about human psychology and diplomatic methods. "They are offering you jobs already," Hana laughed during one of their video calls. "You have not even graduated yet." "It feels strange," Deho admitted. "A month ago, everyone was afraid of what humans might be like. Now they want our help with their problems. That is because you showed them who we really are, Hannah said, proudly. You showed them that our strength comes from caring about others, not from hurting them. Professor Veltar called Dae-ho to her office one afternoon to discuss his future studies. I want to propose a new course, she said. Comparative fear psychology. We need to study how different species approach fear and conflict. Your examination has opened up entirely new areas of research. You want me to help teach it? Dae-ho asked. I want you to design it, the professor replied. You have shown us that there are ways of dealing with fear that we never considered. The galaxy needs to learn these methods. That evening, Dae-ho sat in his room looking out at the stars. The same stars that had seemed cold and distant when he first arrived now looked warm and welcoming. He was no longer alone on a strange station surrounded by aliens. He was part of a community that valued what he had to offer. His communication device chimed with an incoming message. It was from the Galactic Diplomatic Corps. We have reviewed the reports from your academy examination, the message said. We would like to offer you a position as a cultural understanding specialist upon your graduation. Your unique insights into fear-based conflict resolution could help prevent wars throughout the galaxy. Dae-ho smiled and set the device aside. He would think about the job offer later. Right now, he wanted to call Hannah and tell her about his day and about his classmates and about how different everything had become. He was no longer the strange human that everyone feared. He was Dae-ho Kim, friend and classmate and future diplomat. He had shown the galaxy that humans were not monsters to be afraid of, but people who understood fear and loneliness and the need for connection. Most importantly, he had learned something about himself and his species. Humans were not defined by their capacity for violence, but by their capacity for compassion. Their greatest strength was not their ability to fight, but their ability to comfort a frightened child, even when that child was made of their own deepest fears. Outside his window, ships from dozens of worlds docked at the Academy station. Students and teachers from across the galaxy came to learn from each other. And now, for the first time in galactic history, they were all eager to learn. From humans, too. The fear chamber still stood in the old part of the station, ready to test future students. But it would never again be quite the same, because now everyone knew that there was more than one way to face your fears. Sometimes the bravest thing you could do was not to fight the thing that frightened you, but to hold it close and tell it that everything would be okay.